The year is 1119. In the deserts north of Antioch, dawn does not rise, it erupts. A furnace of red light spills across the dunes, revealing a sight no soldier in Christendom or Islam would ever forget. On one side, 50,000 Crusaders, armor scorched by sun and sand, banners frayed by years of war, eyes hollow but burning. On the other, a Muslim host so vast that chroniclers refused to write the number plainly. They wrote metaphors instead. A sea of men, a plague of hooves, a cloud of dust that had no end. But the number survives in a single Damascene record, 300,000. If stories like this remind you how fragile history is, how often statistics lie, and how sometimes the impossible becomes real under burning skies, subscribe to this channel. Because the past isn't dead, it's waiting to be remembered. And this battle, this moment when the world tilted, is one worth remembering. 300,000 warriors under the command of Ilghazi, the Lion of Mardin. A general whose victories left cities trembling, whose armies rolled over Christian fortresses like waves over pebbles. Yet on this day, under a sun bright as God's own blade, everything would break. Not the Crusaders, not the desert, the world. This is the story the Crusades tried to bury, the story Muslim historians argued over for centuries, and then the battle where mathematics died and destiny changed shape. Here on Crimson Historians, this is where we live, inside the moments the textbooks whisper about. If you're ready to see how 50,000 beat 300,000, stay, because dawn is rising and the desert is thirsty. To understand the impossible, you need to understand the trap. Ilghazi wasn't just strong, he was patient. He allowed the Crusaders, led by Roger of Salerno, to advance miles deep into territory where water was scarce, shade non-existent, and retreat suicidal. He didn't strike. He waited. He let the heat soften their muscles. He let thirst hollow their belief. He let exhaustion do the killing before a blade was drawn. A chronicler writes, Ilghazi hunted them like a lion hunts a weakened stag. By the time the Crusader vanguard reached Sarmata, the trap was set. 300,000 men waited in the hills. And Roger's army didn't know it. The scouts return late, too late. They fall before Roger, armor smoking from forced marches. An army, my lord, enough to darken the mountains. Roger doesn't panic. He has faced worse odds, but his knights, they see the fear he hides behind his steady breathing. 50,000 exhausted men against 300,000 fresh warriors on ground chosen by the enemy. The logic is simple. They should run, but Roger doesn't run. Instead, he orders the formation that will define this battle and become legend. He arranges his men not in a line, not in a crescent, but in a wall, a living fortress of shields, spears, and cavalry interlocks. The infantry digs trenches in front. Archers kneel behind wooden stakes. Banners are planted deep in the sand. And in the middle, Roger kneels and prays. A monk who witnessed it wrote, I saw the prince kneeling in the dust. His lips moved, but his eyes were not on heaven. They were on the horizon where the enemy grew. Ilghazi advances at noon, not morning, not night. Noon, the hour when iron burns flesh, water skins evaporate and hope cracks. 300,000 men descend the hills like a tide of steel. Crusader chroniclers swear the ground trembled. Muslim chroniclers swear the air turned black. Both may be right. The first wave hits the Crusader trenches and snaps. Trenches break the charge. Stakes gore the horses. Spears thrust into the chaos. The Crusaders hold. The second wave comes from the left. Ilghazi is testing the formation, searching for weakness. There is none. The third wave comes directly at Roger's center, intending to crush the army in a single shattering blow. This is the moment the desert itself seems to pause. The Crusaders brace. Impact. The sound is not war, it is collapse. Armor slams against shields, bodies are thrown against bodies, screams bleed into dust. But Roger's wall holds, not because of strength, because of unity. A Damascene historian wrote, "Their line bent like a bow, but did not break." Something Ilghazi had never seen. By late afternoon, Ilghazi understands the truth. He cannot overwhelm them with numbers, so he chooses a different path. He tries to smother them. He turns his cavalry loose, not to attack, but to circle the Crusader fortress, kicking up walls of dust so thick the sun disappears behind a brown, choking veil. Men in the Crusader formation cough blood. Their eyes sting, their throats tighten, water skins empty. Ilghazi smiles. He believes time will finish what steel cannot, and he is almost right. Almost. Sunset arrives, and with it the turning point. The dust settles for just a moment Ilghazi never expected, a moment Roger had prayed for. A blistering wind sweeps down from the Antakya mountains, pushing the dust away and exposing Ilghazi's cavalry lines. For the first time in the entire battle, the Crusaders can see the enemy formation. Roger stands. He lifts his sword. His men know the signal. The Crusader cavalry, which had waited all day behind the infantry wall, finally moves. But they don't charge straight. They spiral. A maneuver Roger learned from Byzantine manuals, a dying tactic from a dying empire. The spiral charge hits the Muslim flank. Not hard, not deep, precision, cutting just far enough to open a gap. And through that gap pours the infantry Roger had hidden behind the cavalry line. The battered, thirsty, half-delirious Crusaders strike like cornered wolves. They don't break the army, they break its balance. A historian from Aleppo writes, "We were not defeated by the sword, we were defeated by confusion." Ilghazi tries to rally his men. He can't. The dunes betray him. The dust blinds him. The cavalry tangled from their own maneuvering. And then comes the moment that seals history. The Crusaders reach the supply wagons. They burn them. 300,000 men now have no water. None. Panic spreads first among the horses, then the infantry, then the officers. Ilghazi tries to regroup uphill, but the Crusaders press forward with the fury of men who know death is behind them, and salvation is through the enemy. The Muslim army begins to fracture. Units pull back. Commanders give contradictory orders. Some soldiers simply run. For the first time in the battle, Ilghazi hesitates, and that hesitation is the knife in the heart of his army. A chronicler of Mosul writes, "When the lion faltered, the herd scattered. Night falls. What happens next is not battle. It is collapse." Roger orders torches lit behind his lines, making his army appear twice its size. Ilghazi's men, dehydrated, exhausted, blinded, mistake retreating units for enemy reinforcements. Fear swallows logic. By midnight, the army that entered the desert as an unstoppable force is now a churning mass of confusion, shadows, and screams. 300,000 break, 50,000 stand. The impossible becomes real. And at dawn, the desert is quiet. Ilghazi has fled. Half his army has deserted. Thousands lie dead or missing in the dunes. The Crusaders, the exhausted, wounded, sunburned, dying Crusaders, stand victorious on a battlefield where they should have been erased. A monk writes, "We were not the conquerors. We were the remnants whom God refused to let fall." A Muslim historian writes, "It was not their swords, it was their refusal to die." And both are right. So why does this battle matter? Because it wasn't a victory of skill over numbers. It wasn't a miracle of faith over force. It was something else. A perfect collision of terrain, timing, discipline, and desperation. A moment when the smaller army understood the battlefield better than the larger one understood itself. 50,000 men held the line long enough for the desert to choose their side. And in doing so, they changed the course of the Crusades. For a generation after this battle, Christian principalities survived when they should have crumbled. All because 50,000 refused to break before 300,000